from the city that never sleeps. 17 miles from Madison Square Garden, New York City. It's America at Night with Rich Valdes, America's favorite late-night talk program, featuring interesting guests from around the world and calls from across America. And now, here is your host, Rich Valdes.
Hi there, good evening, and what's up, America? I am Rich Valdes, Valdes with an S, at Rich Valdes on all of the social media. Your liberty-loving Latino amigo, happy to be here with you this Friday night. We're live and national. If you want to join the show, give me a call, 833-482-5337, 833-4-VALDES. And Friday, it's finally here. It's the end of the week. We welcome the weekend. I know I do. And, on this program, we like to let our hair down a little bit, for those of us that have hair. And really get into a few different things. So I welcome your calls, of course, as always. Friday nights are always very busy on the phones here. 833-482-5337 or 833-4-VALDES. And I want to get into some of the news of the evening, of course. And we're going to talk about a bunch of things. Of course, the Jimmy Kimmel stuff is still there. There's a whole lot of drama related to the Jimmy Kimmel stuff. So not much that we can escape there. But there's more. All right, there's other things that are happening. I was taking a look at some of the outlines, the news outlines that I take a look at before the show, and Jimmy Kimmel's still going, but there are others now that are emerging. You've got some Democrats that are beginning to reject Zoran Mamdani, the Democrat socialist from New York, who is running for mayor of the city of New York. Now, this guy is not only a young guy, and I have nothing against young guys, right? I just think New York City is a big city. It's a huge budget. It is considered by many the capital of the world, right? Because of just the financial capital, the culture capital. It's the focal point, the center of so many different things. And you say, wow, you've got this guy's been an assemblyman for just a couple of minutes. And here he is. He's running for mayor. But I don't make that argument because I think that you can take somebody who's never, ever served a day in office and they could be a tremendous executive in government, whether president, governor, mayor. So I'm not going to fault him there. I'm going to fault him on the things that he believes. I'm going to fault him on the fact that Zoran Mamdani has supported the, I forget what they're called, but a group of 5 terrorists. He supported what they did. He supports the globalization of the Intifada, right? This is, I think, just recently, like in the last 48 hours, he, after pressure, he said, well, I definitely discourage it. I won't denounce it, but I discourage it, right? It's when he's asked if Chavez, right? I don't know if you've seen this clip. I don't have it, but I saw it on social media, and it's worth watching. There's a left-wing journalist named Jorge Ramos. He's from Univision. He famously got into a showdown with Trump, and Trump said, get him out, get him out, get him out, because he was being rude. And Jorge Ramos is no friend of the Republicans. But in his sit-down with Zoran Mamdani, he asked him, he said, look, a lot of people are concerned with your politics. Do you consider... not Hugo Chavez. Who's the guy? Nicolás Maduro. He said, do you consider Nicolás Maduro, the president of Venezuela, who is an admitted communist, right? He says, do you consider him a dictator? And he says, what I'm concerned with is making New York City more affordable, with a big smile on his face. Now, I get it. You can fool some of the people some of the time, but you can't fool all the people all the time. What are you so damn happy about when Jorge Ramos is asking you about your views on this man being a dictator? Now, this is important because guess what? While just the same way that the Venezuelans are living under the Venezuelan regime, there are plenty of people that fear that what happened in Venezuela could happen in their country. Newsflash to America, not the Americans that love this show, but the Americans that listen to this show to hear what the other side is thinking. Most people that have lived under communism, I would venture to say all, but I know a couple that, they don't have their heads screwed on right. They don't like communism, and they don't want it in their country. It is a bad word to them. It's not good. Now, your friends on the Democratic left have told you for years that socialism is great because you can get free stuff, including free health care. Health care is a right, right? That's what Senator Bernard Sanders, he tells you health care is a right. But the problem with this health care is a right thing is, number one, it's not, right? Not a biblical right, not a natural right, not a constitutional right. There's no right to a doctor providing care to you. So this is propaganda. Right? This is just, it's like me telling you that it is your right to become rich. It's not a right. You're allowed to become rich if you want, but you're not entitled by right to become rich. You're not entitled by right to become poor. There's no such right. You're entitled to pursue what you want to pursue. That is your right. So anyway, he asks him, is Nicolás Maduro a dictator? And to his credit, after he says, my concern is with making New York City affordable, he holds him to it and says, but do you consider him a dictator? And he says, I really haven't given that much thought because I'm focused on New York City. My focus is making New York City more. He doubles down. But he answered the question. I haven't given it much thought. So the question becomes now, why haven't you given it much thought? Is this you inviting criticism of people that are going to say you don't know what you're talking about, that you haven't studied the politics of the world, that you're a geopolitical neophyte? Perhaps. Or what it looked like, I think he's a dictator, but I don't want to say he's a dictator. I don't want you to drive a wedge between me and my political godfather, Nicolás Maduro, so I'm just not going to say anything. That's what it looked like to me. Yes, I do expect the worst from Mr. Mamdani. So I say to him, I don't think he did himself any favors in that interview. I don't. I think that this is something that, as it continues to make its rounds, and it happened a while ago, but as it continues to make its rounds, people are going to see this and start seeing Mamdani for who he is. My good friend Frank Morano, New York City councilman, he made a very good point when he was on this show last week. And he said, when Mamdani ran, he didn't run saying, let's defund the police and defend the globalization of the Intifada, or supporting the group of 5 terrorists and whatnot, defunding the police and making, doubling down on sanctuary cities and arresting Netanyahu and not cooperating with Tom Homan or ICE. He talked about that same one topic. We're working on making New York City more affordable. Right? It's a buzzword. He doesn't know what he's talking about. I can guarantee you he's going to make New York City more expensive. Guaranteed. Guaranteed, because the things he's saying can only lead to increases in cost. And that is a danger. That is a danger to every New Yorker. But by contrast, Curtis Sliwa is running for mayor of the city of New York, the founder of the Guardian Angels. Curtis Sliwa is getting support from all over the place. And this week alone, Dominicans, the Dominican Republic, Americans of Dominican Republic descent, one of the biggest clubs in conservatism in New York City, right? The Dominican American Republican Club. They endorsed Curtis Sliwa. They brought in one of their biggest, they call him El Presidente del Merengue, right? The president of merengue, Raúl Acosta. He's the lead singer for a band called Oro Solido. Legendary band. Been around for 20 years, at least 30 maybe. And I can tell you this, people know these people, and they're supporting Curtis Sliwa. Hispanics are coming out for Curtis. Latinos for Curtis. Then you've got today, if you've ever heard of salsa dancing, right? That music, salsa, came out of Puerto Rico. Really came out of the Bronx. Puerto Ricans that were living in the Bronx. Well, salsa, one of the godfather of salsa, Johnny Pacheco, his son Ellis, and today, Willie Colon. Willie Colon is, he's played with Gran Combo. He's been everywhere. He's just a legend in salsa music. Willie Colon made a glowing endorsement of Curtis Sliwa, asking all New Yorkers to vote. Willie Colon is Puerto Rican. He's a staple in the Puerto Rican community. Again, just really high-profile people in the Hispanic community really coming up for Curtis Sliwa. This is not something that you see happening for Mamdani. It's not something you see happening for Cuomo, and it's not something you see happening for Adams, that's for sure. So I would I would say it's safe to say that future polls are going to begin to shift, in particular, if they pay attention to what minority groups are supporting who. So keep your eyes peeled for that. And, of course, I'd be remiss if I didn't mention my friends at WebRoot, right? Because the folks at WebRoot, they have the Total Protection Plan. It's an all-in-one device privacy and identity protection program that can help you keep your data safe, your personal data. Even if it's compromised, WebRoot can help you. WebRoot Total Protection allows identity protection for up to 10 identities and up to $1 million in fraud expense reimbursement. 24/7 customer service right here in the U.S., and an exclusive elder fraud hotline. They even provide identity and dark web monitoring. So if you're interested in protecting your digital reputation, your digital data, right? Because that's really what it comes down to. It's your digital footprint here. WebRoot Total Protection. This is the way to go. Now, they also provide antivirus protection, VPN, cloud backup, and so much more. And this will protect not only you, but your whole family. WebRoot allows for my family and me to live a better digital life, especially in the wake of these continued data breaches that I've talked to you a few times about. And we even had a former White House official on cybersecurity on not that long ago talking to us about that. And that's a fear a lot of people have. So what do? You go to the website. I'm going to get you 50% off. You go to WebRoot Total Protection or WebRoot Essentials, whichever one you choose. Go to the website, webroot.com. That's WEBROOT.com/rich, R-I-C-H. Webroot.com/rich. I'll spell it for you again, WEBROOT.com/RICH.
This is America at Night with Rich Valdes.
Well, thank you, Rich, and thank you for everything. I know you very well, and I listen, but I have a lot of people that listen, and they love your show, and I appreciate it very much.
America at Night with Rich Valdes.
In a hall much smaller than this one, in Philadelphia, Americans met to draft a constitution. In the course of their debates, one of them said that the new government, if it was to rise high, must be built on the broadest base, the will and consent of the people. And so it was, and so it has been. My message today is that the dreams of ordinary people reach to astonishing heights. If we diplomatic pilgrims are to achieve equal altitudes, we must build all we do on the full breadth of humanity's will and consent and the full expanse of the human heart.
Yesterday we marked.
That is President Ronald Reagan commemorating Constitution Day. And, of course, Constitution Day, September 17th, 1787. Here on this program, we are going to, we mark that every day, right? We talk about the Constitution almost every day. But I wanted to make sure this week, being Constitution Day this week, that we recognize Constitution Day. And I want to do that with our guest. Our guest is joining us. He's been with us before, and he's terrific on this issue. Richard Battle, he's a fifth-generation Texan, a long-time Lone Star state business and community leader, and award-winning author. And his latest book is Americans Who Made America. Richard Battle, welcome.
Good evening, Rich. Thank you so much for having us back with you again.
My pleasure. Talk to us about Constitution Day, because I know that it's an often overlooked holiday, and that might be why so few people really care about the Constitution.
Well, and Tulsi Gabbard spoke so eloquently, as you played earlier. I would advocate that we have a national holiday for Constitution Day, but I doubt we ever will, because the Constitution restricts individual and small group power, and our elected officials are not wanting restrictions on their power and opportunity. So that is our protection. But if we do not demand the politicians to enforce the Constitution and restrain their activities in lieu of it, or not in lieu of it, but honoring it, we will end up without it.
Let's talk about it a little more in depth, because I think as we reflect on Constitution Day, and I don't know if you agree with me, but the Constitution was ratified again on September 17th, 1789 or whatever.
Yeah.
And it was a beautiful thing then, and it wasn't an easy thing then, right? My understanding and the history that I've read shows that there was a vigorous debate, and this wasn't debate like which ideas are better. This was real conflict. There were people that were pro-slavery. There were people that were pro-abolition. The abolitionists won. And there was a lot of things that were trying to get into the Constitution that didn't make their way into the Constitution. In fact, the 3/5 compromise, where today many liberals will say that, black people are only counted as 3/5 of a person, not realizing that this was, again, the abolitionists making sure that they were counted, period, because they were going to be counted out of the Constitution. And just so much of the unique history that goes into it that I feel is lost today. Would you agree?
Well, you're correct. And let's back up and remember that the Constitution was not our first governing document. The Articles of Confederation were passed in 1781 before the Treaty of Paris codified our independence. Mm-hmm. And they went into convention in May of 1787, and most people thought they were going to amend the Articles of Confederation, and they spent from May till September crafting a totally new Constitution. And you're correct. There were vigorous debates. There were compromises, the Connecticut Compromise, for example. There was give and take on both sides. They studied civilizations before us, what worked and what didn't. They knew human nature. And they put all of those things together in this unique document that's the longest-serving governing document in history.
Richard Valdes, and that's a great point. While America is one of the youngest, civilizations, if you will, in global history, we have the oldest Constitution in our history, which I think is a beautiful thing. But what's interesting about this is that, like you said, they studied civilizations, they studied a lot of things. And while our document, our Constitution, is not the Bible, it's not perfection, it's not God's word, but it is the best Constitution out there, and not by my declaration or perhaps yours, but really by the fact that we are the longest standing republic.
Yes, and if you go to the preamble, which stated the objectives, the first objective in the Constitution preamble was to form a more perfect union. Our founders recognized that they weren't perfect, the Constitution wouldn't be perfect, and Americans after them wouldn't be perfect, but striving for perfection was our objective. And so they knew that over time, if we'd strive, we would become a better country.
Well, amen to that. Richard Valdes, stick with me. We're going to come back and continue our conversation on the Constitution. And you mentioned Tulsi Gabbard. I'm going to play that just so the audience can hear it as well. And amigos, we're coming right back with Richard Valdes, best-selling author, and of course me, Rich Valdes. Don't go anywhere.
The best guests, the best opinions. This is America at Night with Rich Valdes.
My first year in Congress was 2013. And around the time of Constitution Day, I got an email saying, hey, you're invited to come to the House floor to be a part of reading the Constitution into the congressional record. I thought, this is awesome. What a great tradition, so that year after year, we're reminded of that oath that we took and what it actually means. So I went down and participated in it. I didn't see very many of my Democrat colleagues there. And so later on, I went and talked to them, and I asked them, like, hey, this was really cool. I was stoked to be a part of this. Did you not get the email? The answer I got was quite condescending. They said, Tulsi, we know you're new here. You don't really quite get how this place works. We don't participate in that because that's a right-wing Republican thing. I was not only shocked, but pretty disheartened and saddened by that response. But now as we look at their actions year after year and escalating, especially over these last few years, what they said is actually borne fruit. They don't care about the Constitution. They don't care about the vision that our founders had for this country. They are so blinded by their hunger, this insatiable hunger for power, that they are putting their selfish interests above everything else. And they are launching this all-out assault on our God-given rights and freedoms.
That's Tulsi Gabbard while she was reflecting on her congressional career. That was a couple of years ago at America Fest, believe it or not, a Charlie Kirk event. And talking about how, obviously the Democrats weren't very interested in her experience with her Democrat colleagues not being very interested in the Constitution or celebrating Constitution Day. And I want to come back to our Constitution Day conversation with Richard Battle. Richard Battle is the author of a best-selling book, Americans Who Made America. You can learn more about him at richardbattle.com or follow him on X at Richard V. Battle. But let's continue the conversation here because Richard Battle, I realize that, and I hope I don't sound hyper-partisan in saying this, but the left has been chipping away at destroying and eroding the foundations that the Constitution was built on, and the fact that we rely on the Constitution as a founding document for most of my adult life. How do we reverse that? I guess, A, do you agree? And B, how do we reverse it?
Well, I agree, and I'm old enough to remember when both parties honored the Constitution and were pro-America first. And so, yes, there's been a movement away. And the Constitution has given us the dual liberties, economic freedom and political freedom. And that's what's unleashed the American-do spirit that I write about in Americans Who Made America. Mm-hmm. And that's what we have to get back to. And I'll give you an illustration. The Constitution gives us stability. And it's a set of rules. If we live by it, we succeed. If we don't, we don't. And when I was a kid, my older cousin and I would play Monopoly. Our younger brothers would want to play, but we didn't let them. And when we finally did, we would change the rules on every roll of the dice so that we could win. And so that's what happens if we don't have the stability of something like the Constitution. Then we end up getting whipsawed back and forth with government regulations and laws.
Richard Battle, imagine a world where we say things like, well, the Constitution is a living, breathing document. The founders didn't imagine us having AR-15s or hand grenades in the time that they had muskets. And we apply that same logic to, I don't know, the bank, right? The bank, when I go to buy a house or I go to buy a car, and I tell the bank, listen, you don't know what I might have lost my job. I might have hit the lotto. You don't know what's going on. Right, in either direction. And the bank's saying, yeah, you're right. You know, instead of your monthly car note or your monthly mortgage being this much, we're just going to base it on whatever we feel like, whatever we need. Do you think that would be fair?
Well, absolutely not. And to me, that comes from what I believe is a misinterpretation of human nature, that human nature evolves. And if human nature evolves, that means our Constitution, the Bible, the wisdom of the ages is not applicable to us because we're different people than the founders and people before us. I believe human nature is the same today as it's been since the beginning. And a simple illustration I use is look at Adam and Eve. If you just look at them from literature, not faith-based, when they were caught for eating the forbidden fruit, what did they do? They pointed fingers at each other saying, it's not my fault. And if we see little kids today at a birthday party and somebody breaks something and the mother said, who did it? What do? They point fingers at each other because they're not responsible. human nature is the same today. And since it's the same, it means our founding document is still applicable. The Bible, the wisdom of the ages are there for us to learn from and prosper from.
Yeah, 100%. I think that's right on. Now, Richard Battle, tell us a little bit about the role that civic education is playing right now in either strengthening our republic, or I would say the lack of it in weakening our republic.
Well, when I was a kid, and you too probably, our parents could trust the schools to teach us civics and love of country and patriotism. Now, parents and grandparents can't trust the schools to do that. We used to say the Pledge of Allegiance. They don't do it much anymore because it pledges to the republic. They don't talk about republics in Washington anymore. They talk about a democracy. And as Aristotle said, republics decline into democracies. Democracies degenerate into despotism. So we need more education. I believe parents and grandparents have to take some of this on themselves, and that's part of the reason I do some of the books that I do.
You know, Richard Battle, President Reagan often called on us to be informed patriots. I cite this often because it struck me very early on. I was a young man, and I heard that, and I said, "Oh my gosh, that's right. We should be informed." And I started educating myself. I was fortunate enough, like you, every Friday I went to school in Brooklyn, New York, and I had to wear a white shirt, a red tie, and navy blue slacks every Friday for our school assembly. And we did that, and we saluted the flag, and we sang not just the Star-Spangled Banner, but we sang Abraham, Martin, and John, and there was a bunch of patriotic songs, Grand Old Flag. It was a more patriotic time, I guess, the 80s and the 90s. And I think that things have obviously changed since that era. How do we get back to that time, and are we considered fascists because we want to go back to that time?
Well, only from the people on the left would consider us that way. If we want to go back to loving America and patriotic times, to me it should be a nonpartisan issue there. And we've got to educate the young people and give them an appreciation. Instead of them complaining about the country they don't like, they need to understand the sacrifices that our founders and people after that made to give us this gift that people around the world break our laws coming into the country to try to get what our young people don't respect.
Yeah, it's amazing. It's pretty interesting when sometimes even illegal aliens. I've seen videos of illegal aliens picking on one another because some of them decided to celebrate the 4th of July. And they're like, "You're not even a legal citizen here." And they're like, "I don't care. I still love this country." And it's just remarkable that you can have people sneak into your country because they love your country. They want what's good for your country, and then still have others that do the same but don't have that same love.
Well, yes. And the sad thing, and again, I think it's every one of our responsibilities to try to train the young people on those sacrifices of our founders. I mean, from the Stamp Act in 1765 to the Treaty of Paris in 1783, that was 18 years. They sacrificed their opportunities to win independence for us. And if they would not have done that, we would be subjects of the king, and subjects don't have the same rights as citizens. But we've got to exercise our responsibilities to maintain that citizenship.
Richard Battle, for people that are interested in what you're talking about and they want to learn more about your book and the work that you're doing, how do they find you? Where do they go?
Well, thank you, Rich. RichardBattle.com is the website. All 12 books are there, or you can go to Amazon under Richard V. Battle. They're all there, and in Kindle and audio as well.
Amen. Well, happy Constitution Day to you, sir. Thank you for being here. Godspeed.
Happy Constitution Day to you, Rich. God bless America.
Thank you, Mr. Battle. And amigos, we come back with the rest of your calls, your questions, your comments, Constitution Day, and everything else that's happened this week. Don't go anywhere.
This is America at Night with Rich Valdes. Call now, 833-4-VALDES. That's 833-482-5337. 833-4-VALDES. That's Valdes with an S. 833-482-5337. 833-4Valdes. That's Valdes with an S.
All right, amigos, to the phones we go. You want to join us on Open Phones across America, a time-honored tradition here on this program, started by the late, great Larry King way back when, continued by the late, great Jim Bohannon, for 3 decades. And now you and me get to make radio magic each night. 833-482-5337, 833-4Valdes. And I want to go to the phones. We're going to go to the phones. Let's see. Let's go to Roy. Roy is calling us from Eugene, Oregon, KUGN. Roy, go right ahead, sir.
Hey, Rich. I just wanted to correct something that you kind of many people make this mistake when it comes to the 3/5 rule. The fact is that the slavers were the ones who wanted the slaves counted as complete units, if you will.
Right, to inflate their count so they would have more. Same thing that the Democrats are doing now with illegal aliens, trying to make sure that they count them wholly. And they came up with this compromise to defend, right? So the abolitionists made this compromise to defend the personhood of the slaves, to say, hey, look, we don't want to do that. Does that make sense, or are you still in disagreement with me?
Understand the 3/5. That's why it was a compromise, but it wasn't that it was the slavers who actually wanted the slaves counted fully for apportionment reasons, and it was the abolitionists who didn't want them counted, and that's how the 3/5 thing came about, and it's been misunderstood ever since they did it. Almost every time I ever hear that explained somewhere, people think that they're just calling black people as 3/5 of a person. No, that's
exactly
not what it is.
And that type of dehumanization has always been the approach that the left takes, right? So they do it with everything. They did it with, nobody's an illegal alien, nobody's an illegal immigrant. These aren't illegal. People can't be illegal. You have to call them undocumented. Now, I understand there are people that just don't like immigration, period, right? I know that firsthand. I've had people tell me, I don't like the idea that Americans becoming browner, and I go, hey, I'm a brown person, according to the left standards. And they, then they correct themselves. They go, oh, but you're one of the good ones. There's a legitimate issue with that. But you're right. There are a lot of people that want to dehumanize their enemy, including the vile trans-loving person that murdered Charlie Kirk, and that's part of I guess a bigger conversation about demonizing one's opponent to the point where you kind of fall in love with hating them, and I think that's where we are. And I'm going to share a little story with you, Roy. Earlier today I was talking to a friend of mine, and he is Cuban. He came from Cuba on a jet ski from Havana, Cuba to Key West some 20-something years ago. And he doesn't like communism. He hates the communist dictatorship. He hates Russia. He hates all communists, anything related to communists. However, he's got no problem with Democrats in America. And he says, no, because they're not communists. He's like, they're just liberal. They're not communists. He's like, they're not using the power of the government to do anything. He said, quite conversely, what we have here is, he says, you and your friends, you and President Trump, it's you guys that are using the power of the government now to fire Jimmy Kimmel. And he was up in arms, and I couldn't help but just, be taken aback. And I said, hold on a second. So you're here up in arms, right? When we talked about Charlie Kirk, your comment was, I didn't know the guy. I think it's really messed up what happened. But when we get to Jimmy Kimmel, you literally are raising your arms. You're raising your voice. You're angry. So you're angry, and you're, I said, this is the problem we have. You have a problem with somebody losing their job because their network says, hey, you're going to get all your money. You just can't be on TV. But when it comes to somebody getting assassinated, all you can say is, yeah, I think that's wrong. And I think that's the problem. There is no righteous indignation for the stuff that's wrong. And we have to have a real come to Jesus moment conversation with ourselves and with each other, I think, to really figure out what's going on here? How many times are we going to misrepresent things, whether it's the 3/5 compromise, whether to dehumanize people, to make it okay, or turn a blind eye to the fact that there's assassinations of a political nature going on, and we're just going to say, look, it's free speech. It's free speech, right? Where do we end up, Roy?
Well, it's an interesting question on the Kimmel thing. A lot of people don't understand that you, as well as the networks, are subject to the control of the FCC, and it's been that way for 100 years. And the limitations on speech, because of the limitations of the airwaves, was understood 100 years ago. This is nothing new. All these same people who were upset about Kimmel, they didn't say anything derogatory when Tucker Carlson lost his job for whatever reason he did. Pardon me?
Kimmel did. Kimmel celebrated that loss.
Oh yeah, he celebrated it. Of course. I mean, they were celebrating the fact that Tucker Carlson lost his job, but now they're suddenly outraged and claiming that it's a violation of free speech. Well, it's not a violation of free speech because, as you well know, being in the radio industry, speech is not free in the same way that it is in a newspaper or
standing
even on
outside
the internet
Capitol
now.
Hill, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, the public square.
Jimmy Kimmel could speak outside Capitol Hill all he wants, but he's not using the public airwaves to do it.
100%.
So,
Roy in Eugene, Oregon. Sorry to cut you off, Roy. My producer's flagging me down. I got to hit this break. But excellent comments. Thank you for the conversation. KUGN in the building. Amigos, we're coming right back. The rest of your calls and more. Don't go anywhere.
This is America at Night with Rich Valdes. America at Night with Rich Valdes.
A part of the many responses to Jimmy Kimmel being pulled off the air, Chappelle has seemingly responded while making an announcement of his own. Over on his Instagram page, Chappelle released a clip of himself from his 2019 Mark Twain Prize speech. And interesting enough, it appears to be his response, or more so warning, about the First Amendment amidst Kimmel's controversy.
The First Amendment is first for a reason. The Second Amendment is just in case the first one doesn't work out. We gotta let some air out of the ball, man. The country's getting a little tight.
The country's getting a little bit. Yep. Listen, Dave Chappelle there, funny as always. And I agree with him. You know, the Second Amendment definitely is there to protect you from your government, especially if they're coming after that First Amendment. The bigger issue here is this was not that. And I want to get your thoughts on it quickly with 40 seconds to go. Paul, Boise, Idaho, streaming the show tonight. Paul, go right ahead quickly.
Thanks for taking my call. Yeah, I just wanted to mention that if you want to see the living document on viewing, call the Smithsonian. They had two of them on display for a number of years, but somebody decided they wanted to paint over it, so they have to be real careful about that. But it was pretty amazing when I saw one.
Yeah, I would bet it is. Paul and Boise, thank you for your call, my brother. Godspeed to you. Great weekend. And amigos, hasta la próxima. Take care. Good night. And God bless you, America. We continue on some of our affiliates for more stimulating talk. And for some of you, this is the end of the ride. So God bless you, America. I'm Rich Valdes.
Live from the city that never sleeps. 17 miles from Madison Square Garden, New York City. It's America at Night with Rich Valdes America's favorite late night talk program, featuring interesting guests from around the world and calls from across America. And now, here is your host, Rich Valdes.
Hi there, good evening, and what's up, America? I am Rich Valdes, Valdes with an S, at Rich Valdes on all of the social media. Welcome to the Friday night edition of the program. We are live, we're national. Happy to be here for another hour. It's 7 minutes past the top of the hour, and I'm looking forward to speaking with everybody out there tonight. 833-482-5337, 833-4-VALDES. And a bunch of things going on across the country tonight. Senate Democrats are shooting down the Republican plan for a short-term funding extension. This is always what happens when there is not a continuing resolution in place and the Democrats are in position to shut down the government. Democrats always want to shut down the government. Spineless Republicans always freak out. Oh my gosh, we can't weather that storm. Staunch conservatives always say, go right ahead. I'm going to order a pizza. I'll be right here. Let the government be shut down as long as possible. In the words of one of my mentors, the great one, Mark Levin, he always said, you know, the government is closed every Saturday and Sunday. And he's 100% right? So if the government's closed every Saturday and Sunday, and we don't fall apart then I think we can get by. Right? But they always make it seem like it's the end of the world, right? Oh my gosh, old people are not going to get Social Security. Never happens. It's never happened. There's never been a missed Social Security check ever, but they use the same lies every time. The reality is, shut it down. I would call them out all day. Shut it down. I dare you. Shut it down. The only one that loses is you, because you know why? Republicans don't have voters that primarily rely on the government for their subsistence in life. Nobody wants to live a life where the government's opening versus closing impacts my life. I don't live for the government. The government should be living for me, right? It's a government of the people, for the people, by the people, not the other way around. It doesn't say we the people are the subjects of this government. No, it's we the people, real big at the top. So I could care less. Let the Democrats shoot down the plan for short-term funding, because you know what happens? It's all of their programs, it's all of their giveaways, it's all of their freebies that are going to dry up first, and then they're going to have to turn to their constituents and say, it's Trump did it, Trump is the bad guy here, it's Trump and all the evil Republicans that they don't want you to have this and do that. And that's why they want to do it. They want bedlam, they want chaos, they want every bad thing to happen. They created January 6th in many ways so that they could say, look at what happens when these fascists don't get what they want. This is what they want. Earlier today, I was invited on a podcast called Mr. Big Mouth, and to talk about a number of things. This is a guy that I knew. He wasn't always a podcaster. He was a political guy, and he was a TV cameraman back in the days for network and cable television. And we were talking, and he was telling me about how he went to the Capitol on January 6th, and his wife, who's apolitical, she just accompanied him for the trip, told him, honey, this looks like a setup. And he said, why do you say that? And she said, because there's all sorts of people that look like they're planted. And this is, again, her observation. She felt like many of the people there were like dressed like MAGA people, but weren't acting like MAGA people. They were being belligerent. They were, inciting people, trying to get people to do certain things, whether it was starting chants that didn't make sense, that weren't like MAGA chants. The MAGA people chant one thing, USA, USA, right? That's what they do. The only other chant they ever had was lock her up, lock her. Those are it. Those are the two chants of the MAGA movement. And she saw them trying to do other types of chants and realized, you know what, their chanting doesn't seem to be in line with the MAGA movement. So, again, this was his story to me today about what he observed there. And ultimately, he said he was just shooting some video. He never got in any trouble. He didn't go into the Capitol or anything like that. But it just is interesting when you see somebody that is by no means, a Republican activist by any means. This guy he was in media, but as a professional, right? He was a cameraman, camera operator. He's not a partisan in any way. And his wife has nothing to do with politics. She was just giving her gut reaction to the things that she saw. And I thought that's fascinating because, this is very consistent with what I've heard. Now, I wasn't planning on talking about January 6th, but I brought that up because, again, it was fresh in my mind from my earlier conversation. And B, this is how Democrats operate. They will create whatever type of fiction they need to create using real things, real people, real resources, right? The case they brought against Trump for Russian collusion was a very real case based on a fake search warrant, right? A fake FISA warrant to spy on him and to spy on Carter Page and to spy on the Trump campaign and then later on Trump as president. This is unheard of to most American people. But this is what they did. And then they claim they didn't do anything wrong. And then you find out that the FBI people doing it were screwing around with each other, cheating on their spouses with one another while they were going after Trump. They were exchanging text messages with one another, saying how they hated Trump and they needed to get Trump. And all of this came out in the media. All of this came out in the Mueller and the Durham report. And yet nobody got held accountable for anything. But if nothing else, at least people that are breathing, if you have a pulse, hello, wake up, right? Just pay attention a little bit and realize that Democrats are one-trick ponies. This is not just me being a partisan. This is me just calling it what it is. You can say Republicans are one-trick ponies too, right? They say liberty, we say the Constitution, we say less taxes. I agree. Oh, those are all pretty standard Republican talking points and ones that I stand behind. Those are good things. So when you have the Democrats saying, we're going to do this, they're always trying to create some sort of sabotage to blame Republicans for what they've done. And that is clear as day. If you're paying attention, you have a pulse, you have an eyeball, maybe two eyeballs, you've seen this happen. Now, in other things, Joy Reid, she was cheering on the singer who was calling for Charlie Kirk's assassination, saying it was justified. Now, this, I got to say, she's free to say what she wants. I don't want to sit here and bemoan all the righteous indignation that is really flowing through me. But ultimately, if you're getting criticized by the right, and maybe by a lot of people, saying it's really not okay to be doing what you're doing, calling for people's death, celebrating their death, mocking their death. That's not something normal, human, respectable, decent people do. But they don't care, right? Because they don't see us as normal, respectable, human, decent people. So it's okay. It's a dehumanization thing. You're not really people. You're MAGA. You're maggots, as many of them refer to me and those of us that support the Make America Great Again movement. So it's okay to treat people differently. It's okay to put on the black mask and spray people with mace and, do worse. Terrible times that we're in. Anyway, plenty of things I want to get into tonight. This stuff is enough, in my opinion, to get you sick, to make your head explode, to drive your blood pressure through the roof. And my concern with many people is that what was initially sadness and then anger and now we go to bargaining may become stress and anxiety and maybe anger again. And what effect does that have on one's body? What's the consequence on your body, on your heart, on your mind, right? Can your brain handle that? I know just being overweight pushes up your cardiovascular disease susceptibility by a whole bunch. So imagine all of this negativity and all of this traumatic information that we're ingesting. What type of risk does that have on our health? Well, Dr. Jeremy Liff is scheduled to join us. He's a board-certified neurologist specializing in strokes and brain aneurysms. And we're going to get into that because I think there's a lot. There's a lot that is going on in life, not to mention our diet, that could really mess us up. So keep it locked right here. It's Rich Valdes. We continue.
This is America at Night with Rich Valdes.
By the way, your ratings are up. Congratulations. I had somebody. It's always nice to check. I like to see, even if they're friends, I like to see how are they doing. Are people listening, right?
That's
but
right.
You're doing great.
America at Night with Rich Valdes.
In order to prevent stroke, we tend to say that 80% of strokes can be prevented by managing risk factors. And so that should really start early in life. And that includes healthy diet, exercise, not smoking. If you know that you have a family history of high cholesterol, stroke, heart disease, you want to get these things tested early so that you can make sure you're either on the right diet or the right medications to prevent high cholesterol or diabetes. And the earlier you manage these risk factors, the less likely you are to have a stroke. I always say that if everyone managed their risk factors from an early age, stroke would be a much less prevalent disease in the U.S. and the world.
Mandy Binning, she's director of stroke programs at Global
In order
Neuroscience
to prevent
Institute. And I want to go into a conversation with Dr. Jeremy M. Liff. Dr. Liff is a board-certified neurologist specializing in stroke and brain aneurysms. And I saw this tidbit here. Every 40 seconds, someone in the United States has a stroke, adding roughly 795,000 strokes to the list every single year. Of those, about 610,000 are first-ever strokes, while nearly 185,000 are recurring events. And that's according to the CDC, the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention. And that's a number that, to me, sounds alarming. I want to get Dr. Liff to weigh in. Dr. Jeremy Liff, welcome.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
So talk to us about the several ways. I understand there's 5 ways to prevent cardiovascular disease or having a stroke. Tell us more.
Well, that's true, and I think they're based on the idea that strokes are mainly caused by two mechanisms, and one is that the heart sends a clot to the brain, but the second most common one is that the blood vessels that are going to the brain themselves and that are in the brain can get diseased. And there's 5 main ways in which they can get diseased, and so to try to prevent the risk of stroke, those are the targets. I'd say the first one is making sure that you control your blood pressure. That's probably the most important one. The second one would be that if you smoke, you should stop. The third is that if you have diabetes or pre-diabetes, that you get it treated immediately and you do not let your blood sugar go out of control and your insulin resistance, because insulin resistance can severely damage all of the blood vessels in your body, and especially the ones that go to your brain. And so the next steps after that would be regular exercise, cardiovascular, and then eating really good non-ultra-processed foods that don't destroy your metabolism and destroy your liver and give you sort of overall health and not allow those vessels to develop atherosclerotic plaques.
Like what? What do you recommend?
In terms of diet, the Mediterranean diet, I think, has really been shown over a variety of studies to really be the best. So that's going to include healthy fats like fish, lean meats, fruits and vegetables, olive oils, extra virgin olive oils. You want to really avoid the ultra-processed foods, the stuff that sits in the grocery store for 75 years and doesn't change. Seed oils, frying with vegetable oils, unhealthy fats, and just really the worst thing I think that's so prevalent in our society is high sugar foods, even ones that are labeled low fat. If they're high in sugar, they're not going to be good for you in the long term.
Let me ask you about that, because you mentioned before pre-diabetes and diabetes being the number one thing that could ruin your blood vessels, which would open up the door to strokes. And there's a correlation, from what I understand, between high sugar foods, even just having more carbohydrates than you need, that can affect this and contribute to insulin resistance. So how does that work, and how do people mitigate that?
That's exactly essentially the direct mechanism. Our body has a mechanism to keep our blood sugar in line, because if our blood sugar goes out of whack acutely, you can have a seizure. So insulin gets pumped from the pancreas to the liver, and it allows us to keep our blood sugar in check. But if you bombard your liver with insulin because you take a lot of sugar in, and you do that for 30 years, eventually you'll become insensitive to insulin, and you'll need more and more insulin to keep your blood sugar down. And you will get to a point where you simply can't keep that blood sugar down. And then the liver gets sick, and you have these things, it's a technical term, but it's called advanced glycosylated end products, where the sugar and the sugar metabolites can actually start to get into the lining of the blood vessels. And so that's why people with diabetes end up with eye problems, and they end up with small fiber neuropathies with a very, very small blood vessels at the end of our fingertips and our eyes can get damaged, but also the very small blood vessels that run in the brain. I would say of all the patients that I've seen with severe brain artery disease, there's such an overwhelming correlation with finding out through some simple blood tests that they have diabetes and that diabetes wasn't controlled.
And is it accurate or safe to presume that when you've developed insulin resistance, you're kind of not like everybody else? You really maybe should stay away from certain complex carbohydrates because they kind of metabolize as sugar?
Absolutely. I mean, so especially recently, there's been a lot of talk about things like intermittent fasting and other types of diets, and the ketogenic diet. I actually, which is a diet in which you take a lot of fat and a lot of protein, but you avoid carbohydrates. I think that's a great diet for people with diabetes. I don't know if it's something where for the rest of your life you necessarily need to be on, but it's almost like fixing a broken leg. It's like finally letting your liver heal for a little bit so you don't bombard it with insulin because you're taking in so many carbohydrates. Let it heal and then allow it to resensitize itself to insulin, where we can take in some sugar every now and then, like say some fruit or something like that, and your insulin can be sensitive.
But not like a donut.
To the insulin. No, you don't want to. Donuts, no good. To me, the best sugar you can get is from fruit because it has the fiber with it. If you have diabetes or insulin resistance, you should avoid fruit juice because there's no fiber along with that sugar, and it'll spike your insulin. But yeah, I mean, donuts and cakes and ho-hos that, again, can sit. If something can sit on the shelf for 75 years and not change, you probably shouldn't put it into your body. It's obviously easier said than done. But it's so important for our health in the long term.
Folks, we're on with Dr. Jeremy Liff, Dr. Jeremy M. Liff, board-certified neurologist, specializing in stroke and brain aneurysms. We're going to come right back and continue our conversation because I think oftentimes we go for that donut and say, well, it's only once in a while. But somebody once told me, look at the donut like poison. Do you do poison every once in a while? I want to see if the good doctor agrees with me or not. We'll get his bedside manner, his take on this straight ahead. Coming right back with Dr. Jeremy Liff. Don't go anywhere. I'm Rich Valdes.
Look at Rich Valdes. He's now a radio host, and he's a great radio host.
America at Night with Rich Valdes.
All right, amigos, welcome back. Rich Valdes keeping you company all night long. You know the number, 833-482-5337, 833-4-VALDES. And stroke, or a brain attack, as I call it, remains one of the nation's deadliest health challenges, accounting for approximately 1 in every 20 deaths. That was an estimate from 2022, just a couple of years ago. And an estimated 165,000 lives lost in just as a result of that. And that's per the American Heart Association. In total, about 7.8 million U.S. adults, that's 3.1% of the population, have experienced a stroke at some point in their lives. And that's according to the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention, the CDC. So I want to continue our conversation with Dr. Jeremy Liff. He's a board-certified neurologist specializing in stroke and brain aneurysms. And we talked a little bit about diet, Doc. You explained that carbohydrates are the enemy. They're not good. People should, especially if they are insulin sensitive or diabetic or pre-diabetic, that they should go on a diet like keto and really eliminate carbs or anything that will become metabolized as sugar, because that's truly the enemy. But we also have another issue, which is either being, I'm going to say fat, I guess I should say obese or overweight, which affects your blood pressure. But then there's also heredity, right? That, just your biological makeup. Some people have, I don't know, is bad genes? Is that allowed to be said? That you inherit this from your family, high blood pressure. What do you do in that case?
Yeah, that's very true. And hypertension is a primary disorder, so we don't exactly know what it's caused by, and a lot of people do have it in their family. And the most important thing is just to see your doctor on a regular basis and take your prescribed medication. There's no question that if you have obesity, that both high blood pressure and diabetes will get better if you're able to lose weight. But some people do all the right things and they still have things like high blood pressure or atherosclerotic disease, meaning hardening of the arteries. And then you really do have to take those medications religiously, get your blood pressure checked, and really just sort of play the cards you're dealt, but because you can still do okay.
Is that a high number of people or a low number of people
who have high blood pressure from genetics?
Hey, you're like, for me, I'll give you an example. I don't have high blood pressure, thank God, but my dad did, and I was 270 pounds. Hadn't been to the doctor in about 5 or 6 years, and I'm 5'8", and my dad died of a stroke, and I was paranoid. And I said, you know what, I'm going to the doctor. Went to the doctor, and he said, come in for labs, and we'll go over them. I went back to go over them, and I said, so how's everything, Doc? And I really thought he was going to, yeah, you're good. Like usual, they usually pat me on the belly and go, just lay off the rice and beans a little bit. All right, take care. See you next time. But he didn't say that. Actually, he was really serious. He had a big sigh, and he said, you're on track for a massive heart attack or stroke by 50. And I was like, no, stop playing. And he was like, no, I'm serious. On my medical license right now, I'm supposed to put you on blood pressure medicine, diabetes medicine, and cholesterol medicine. And I was in shock. I was like, what do you mean? I thought I was fat and fit. I had no idea that I was unhealthy. And it was really a shock to me. I mean, the level of ignorance for a guy that, I consider myself decently read. I was in the dark about this stuff. Because, again, I didn't go to the doctor. I thought I was too cool. I was 30-something at the time. And he told me all this stuff, and he put me on the ketogenic diet you're talking about. That was after we made a deal. I said, what do I don't want to take the pills. I don't like medication. What do I do? And he said, you got to lose weight, man. You got to lose weight. And then he gives me this other riot act where he said, I know how you guys are. And I said, who's you guys? And he said, Puerto Ricans. You guys eat roast pork with everything. You eat a heaping plate of rice with every meal. And he said, I got a lot of patients like you. And he said, sadly, they end up getting their first their toes, then their entire limbs amputated by the time they're 60. That's if they don't die from the massive heart attack or stroke at 50. And it was a wake-up call that I needed. So, I cut a deal with him, and I lost 30 pounds in 90 days. And the deal was for 25. I lost 30. And he said, all right, keep it up. And every time I went, he gave me more. It went from you got to take a walk, a certain amount of minutes a day. Then it was join a gym. Now you got to go to the gym. Now you need treadmill. Then, it was really, I was always in trouble, I felt. But I got healthier and healthier and healthier. Today, I'm, I think, 194 pounds. And I go to the gym pretty regularly. And I don't think I'm out of the dark. My A1C number is a lot lower. I got it down to 5.7, but still not great, right? I'm not rocket, I'm not throwing a party. It's not the best place to be. But it was at 14 when I started this journey. So I've been through this journey myself, and I realized that diet's a big part, exercise is a big part. I haven't had to take any medications thus far, but I have friends that they work out too. And they do have to take high blood pressure medicine. And I guess that's kind of how we started this segment, where you said it's one of those primary illnesses that we just don't know where it comes from. Is there any other way to mitigate high blood pressure? Because that seems to be the number one thing that kills people.
Well, certainly, I mean, just to mention, if you told me that your A1C was 14 when you walked in my office, I would also freak out as well, because that is way too high. That is dangerously high, and that is the type of number that when people come into the hospital because now they've had a stroke and you go, oh my God, that's why you have so many blood vessels that are narrowed in your brain and in your carotid artery. In terms of, and so good job that you were able to lower it.
Thanks. Yeah, good job on him for scaring the crap out of me.
That's fantastic. Yeah, that's a very scary number. 8 is a scary number. 14 is really scary. But for blood pressure, so anybody who has high blood pressure and is obese or morbidly obese will benefit from losing the weight. There are patients that are not obese and they do have high blood pressure, and then you do have to take the medication. But in addition to that, cardiovascular exercise is always going to be helpful. Get up, walk, run. If you don't do anything, walk. If you do walking, jog. If you get on the stationary bike, do something low impact, get on an elliptical, something, just to get your heart rate up a little bit, 3 or 4 times a week. Take baby steps to begin with. If you do absolutely nothing, don't try to go from 0 to 1,000, because you'll just burn out little by little by little. And then all of a sudden you look back and you go, wow, I'm doing much better. And that, in addition to medication, you'll give yourself the best shot.
So people can't really escape this high blood pressure thing. But what's been your experience with people if they want to do the treadmill, or, I guess how much cardio, or what do you recommend for exercise to mitigate high blood pressure, or do you not?
Well, I think that the first thing is if you're having issues, if you're having physical issues now, you have to make sure that your doctor's okay with you doing any type of exercise regimen.
Right. Yeah. That's
but
true.
once that's, if you don't want to start having chest pain when you have and then have an issue like that. But if you're cleared for that, what I would suggest is, if you're doing absolutely nothing, just try at least 2 or 3 times a week to just either go for a walk around the block or get on something, and then just gradually get better and better. Get your heart rate up a little bit. Maybe 1.5 to 2 times its resting rate. Again, make sure your doctor clears you for each individual case is important. But just start slow, do something. And the key is you want to sweat a little bit. You want to get your heart rate up, and you want to do it, let's say, at least 2 or 3 times a week. People start to feel better in addition to that, and it's both a physical high that you can get, but also I find patients who do that, they just start to feel better about themselves. It's as if they've accomplished something, and there's an emotional lift. Although I've taken some sort of control back over my health, which I think is as important as the physical benefit, but they're both equally important.
Yeah, I would agree with that. Everything you said is true for anybody that's listening. My doctor didn't necessarily give me that advice. He kind of said, hey, you got to go do this. And I did. And I walked very slow, like a fat person, very slow on that treadmill for literally, I don't know, a month and a half, maybe even 2 months. And then I started walking a little faster, like to actually sweat. And it took me a long time. I didn't like it. I felt uncomfortable. But you build I did a whole year of just treadmill before I even touched any of the resistance stuff, like weights and stuff like that. Now it's a combination of the two, and I find that the magic number for me is 5 days a week in the gym. I don't always get it, but when I do, that's when I feel the best, and that's when I look the best, and it's when I'm the strongest. But you're right. I'm in my 3rd year of that, and that's exactly how it went. Everything was baby steps. Started with lightweight. I had an injury in my shoulder. I couldn't move it. I was super negative. I can't do it. There's no way. I had a great friend who's a trainer, and we worked out together, and he was like, just do it. And we got to a point where he was like, do you see anybody here dying? Is anybody leaving here in an ambulance? He was like, it's not going to happen. You're okay. Just try harder. Add more weight. And I was like, you know what? You're right. Because I was worried. And eventually I said, yeah, you know what? I'm being a wuss here. And I started adding more weight, and I feel better. I look better. So all of that is very, very true. But if my doctor had told me that passively, I would have been like, all right, whatever. It took the riot act. And it's a shame that it took that, but that's what it takes. Do you find that in your practice as well?
I was just about to say, I have so many patients who come in with their family members, their children, they're 60, 70-year-olds, and their kids are 30 and 40, and they basically look at me and they say, doctor, could you please tell my father exactly what he needs to do and what's going to happen if he doesn't do it? I mean, they're just begging for sort of that warning shot to be
with
fired
the white coat
because
they'll listen to you.
Well, sometimes they do, but the scary part is that things like high blood pressure don't cause you a problem until they cause you a big problem. And,
right, you don't know it's there.
And so exactly. So it's painless. There are no symptoms. What's happening is that it's causing problems building up in your body until one day something bad happens. And that's one of the reasons why so many people don't treat their blood pressure. So, and I should also mention that the same risk factors for stroke and small vessels of your brain and your carotid artery pretty much overlap with the risk factors for coronary artery disease and heart attacks. So it's just so important. Sometimes you need to be scared a little bit, and the best thing is to be scared before anything bad happens to you, and then
right.
you can save yourself. Yeah.
It's better to be scared because the doctor read you the riot act than scared because you're in the hospital for something really bad. Dr. Liff, any chance you could give us a couple of more minutes to talk about aneurysms, because I have to hit a break right here.
Of course I can. Yes.
Oh, thank you so much. I appreciate it. Dr. Jeremy Liff, we're coming right back.
This is America at Night with Rich Valdes. Call now, 833-4-VALDES. That's 833-482-5337. 833-4-VALDES. That's Valdes with an S.
You're educating America, and you are giving us an opportunity to speak freely. That's why I love this station, and I love your show.
America at Night with Rich Valdes. Call now, 833-4-VALDES. That's 833-482-5337. 833-4-VALDES. That's Valdes with an S.
All right, amigos, welcome back. It's Rich Valdes. We continue our conversation talking about all the stress that people are under lately. And it's not just stress, it's diet, it's exercise. We have to, have some sort of a fit and healthy lifestyle. It's not optional, it's right. It's not, some people work out, some people don't. Everybody needs to do something every day to sweat for a good, I'm going to say 40 minutes, despite what your doctor may tell you. If I do 30 minutes on the treadmill, I feel like I didn't do enough. It really works at 40, and honestly at an hour is where I feel like that's the sweet spot for me. And maybe that's just particular to me, but I think that's really where I sweat the best, I feel the best, I feel tired, and I get that energy boost later. But I want to come back to Dr. Jeremy Liff, board-certified neurologist specializing in stroke and brain aneurysms. And I want to talk a little bit about, some of our listeners, right? I've had listeners on this program just recently. A listener my age, 47, 48 years old, cut her finger at work, wouldn't stop bleeding, so she went to the doctor. They did something. They I don't know how they came across this, but they said, let's do an MRI. They found 2 aneurysms in her brain, and they needed to treat them. And they did this coil procedure. Talk to us about what aneurysms are. My brother Bobby passed away a couple of years ago of an aneurysm, I guess exploding. And, I know it's like a bleed, a bubble, but I think many people, including myself, really aren't understanding what that is.
Yeah, it's a very scary thing, and for the public that knows very little about it, it's even scarier. So an aneurysm in general is an artery which gets weak. Part of it gets weak, and it kind of starts to balloon out. And if it gets weak enough and that balloon gets big enough, it can rupture. And if that is taking place in your brain, it can cause a very grave and immediately life-threatening hemorrhage. So it's a very scary proposition.
So when that's treated, I know that they place like a metal coils in there to, I guess, fill that space so that they don't pop. Is this treatment effective? One person texted me and told me that they have a 4 millimeter, one on each side of the brain, one that's 4 millimeters, one that's 1 millimeter or 1 centimeter. I don't know if I'm getting the numbers right, but what is that like? How is, once you get the coils, are you out of the dark, or what do you got to do? And can you keep, smoking, vaping? What type of impact would that have?
Well, first of all, there's really one bona fide risk factor that we know about for the rupture of an aneurysm, and that's smoking tobacco. So the answer to that is no. You must stop for that reason and many other reasons. Now, in terms of aneurysms specifically, the story of cutting your finger and finding an aneurysm, that is how most people find the aneurysms in their brain that haven't ruptured. They find them because they're looking for something else. That's right, because like high blood pressure, aneurysms don't usually give you a problem until they give you a life-threatening problem. And so many people are walking around with them and don't realize they have them. Now, that's the bad news. The good news is that the way that we can screen for them and find them is so much better and so much easier than the way that we would have had to in the past. And the other piece of good news is that for the ones that have gotten big enough where they should be treated, the treatment options are much better over the last 10 and 15 years and much less invasive with a lot less recuperation. One of them involves the coil, as you were talking about. But there are other specialized types of stents which have been invented and refined over the past 10 and 15 years, and other implants, in which you can have a catheter-based procedure which allows you to go home the next day and have the aneurysm treated, and then it's just a matter of following it up to make sure that it doesn't come back. But you're much safer at that point once the initial treatment is made. The other general way of having it treated, which is what the only option there used to be, would be to have an open brain surgery where a surgeon has to go in and open your skull. And that's still something that we have to do, especially if the aneurysm has ruptured and you're in a much worse state. But for the ones that haven't ruptured and the ones that are found and you're just fine, but they get found incidentally, a lot of times we can treat it with a catheter-based procedure that allows you to go home the next day. And that's one of my passions in my practice. And to be quite honest, the engineering and the way that it's put into practice is in some ways a miracle as far as I'm concerned.
Outstanding. Doc, I wish I could talk to you for another hour. You're really well versed on this stuff. You must be like a board-certified neurologist or something. Dr. Jeremy Liff, board-certified neurologist specializing in stroke and brain aneurysms. I want to thank you for being with us tonight. Let everybody know how they can find you and keep up to speed with the work you're doing.
You can go to my website, which is jeremyliffmd.com or nyneurodoc.com, and you can see a list of all the conditions. It gives you explanations and treatments and contact info and everything.
Dr. Jeremy Liff, nyneurodoc.com. I want to thank you for being here, sir. Godspeed to you. We'll definitely have you back. I appreciate it.
Thank you so much.
You bet. Amigos, your calls and more coming up right now. Don't go anywhere.
This is America at Night with Rich Valdes.
All right, to the phones we go, and I promise we're going to get to everybody that's on hold. Let's go to Tim, Springfield, Illinois, WTAX. Tim, go right ahead quickly.
Happy Friday.
Yes, sir.
I wanted to ask you about your. I'll start over. There's a great article written in the LA Times, April 11th, 2015, and it's on Lincoln post-war. Because I was researching, since I like Lincoln and I wanted to know about post-war, how did they act after he was assassinated? Mm-hmm. And sure enough, it was the same reaction we got right now.
Oh, interesting. Some people celebrated, some people discouraged it. That's a great topic for us to explore. Tim, I thank you for that. I appreciate it. Shout out to Tim in Springfield, Illinois, WTAX. Have we seen this before? Is it normal to have this type of divide? I love it. We're going to explore that. Maybe not today, but maybe next week. Folks, keep it locked right here. Hasta la próxima. I'm Rich Valdes. Don't go anywhere.
Live from the city that never sleeps. 17 miles from Madison Square Garden, New York City. It's America at Night with Rich Valdes, America's favorite late night talk program, featuring interesting guests from around the world and calls from across America. And now, here is your host, Rich Valdes.
Hi there, good evening, and what's up, America? I am Rich Valdes. We're back for another hour. Welcome to the Friday night edition of the program. 7 minutes past the top of the hour, and we're going to get into a bunch of stuff this evening. We've had some conversation about cardiovascular disease. We've had conversation about the Constitution, and now I want to talk about the media and some of the goings-on of the news of the day. If you want to join us on our late-night national town hall conversation, give me a call, 833-482-5337-833-4 Valdes. And part of what I want to bring up right now is that there was reports of shots fired at an ABC News building in Sacramento, California. Police responded. No one was hurt, thankfully. But there's also a shooting in Philadelphia. This is a tough one to listen to, but a woman was shot. Let me see if I get this right. Man was chasing and shooting at a woman 10 times. This is horrible to hear. This happened a couple of days ago, and I understand they're still investigating this. Meanwhile, there's also a similar situation here where, well, this one I'll play for you. Give me number 14.
Democrat Congresswoman Jasmine Crockett sparking outrage for appearing to dismiss the murder of 20-year-old Kayla Hamilton, who was killed at the hands of an illegal immigrant in 2022. The House was debating a Republican-led bill named after Kayla when the Congresswoman made these comments. Listen.
You take a situation and then you exploit what has happened to not only that person, but you exploit those families and you make it a game. Stop just throwing a random dead person's name on something for your own political expediency.
Joining me now is Jeff Gaylor, the sheriff in the Maryland County where Kayla was killed, and Kayla Hamilton's mother, Tammy Nobles. Thank you both so much for joining us. Tammy, what was your reaction when you heard the Congresswoman describe your daughter like this?
I was really furious because you just don't call a victim of a crime just a random dead person. No victim should be referred as a random dead person. Nope. We were there. I mean, they were there discussing her bill, and she and what she said was really nasty, and it came across as racist.
You know what happens here, folks? This is what happens. And say what you say. Hate me all you want. When people don't have children, Jasmine Crockett's not a mom. When people don't have children, they don't understand how sensitive you need to be around people that have children. It's really that simple. It's not the first conversation I've had about this today. Earlier today, I was hanging out with my buddy, the one I was telling you about, and he was telling me about a mutual friend of ours, a little younger than us, who was commenting on somebody's daughter. And the daughter is like 18 or something like that. And what's, and I said, well, look, he's a single guy. He's young. He doesn't have kids. I get it. I see why, the girl's attractive. But there are certain lines that, you don't cross, and there's respect that has to be maintained. And maybe he crossed those lines, and maybe a conversation needs to be had. But my point is, when people don't have kids, they really are ignorant, right? What does Jasmine Crockett know? She thinks it's okay to call someone's child a random dead person in her irate rant in Congress. Now, all this does is tell me that J.D. Vance, our esteemed vice president, he took all sorts of heat early on in the campaign, or I should say earlier this year, probably later into the campaign, when he said that if we're not careful, we'll have, I think this is a quote, a bunch of, quote, childless cat women or childless cat ladies. And, it was a tongue-in-cheek remark for sure, but I don't think he was wrong. I think he's right. If you have a bunch of childless cat ladies in charge of Congress, in charge of the education system, running the teachers union, how does that really work out? people in charge of all sorts of things that affect children, that affect families. Now, I'm not saying we should discriminate and say everybody that serves has to do it, but when I've never heard ever in my life have I heard a Republican politician ever talk about how many kids you should have and whatnot. But I have heard AOC say, I'm afraid to have kids. We're not having kids, right? And it's not uncommon for folks on the left to say they don't want to have kids. Whatever reason they want to blame. It's the Marxism of we got to blame this. I can't have kids because of you. I can't have kids because of climate change. I can't have kids because Trump's a fascist, right? Whatever they want to blame. Victimhood. AOC's great at it. But ultimately, it becomes problematic when you lack empathy, right? You display some subtle narcissism, in my opinion, that this is all about you. It's all about how irate you can be. It's all about your issue. And you never take a moment to really share an empathetic moment with this woman whose child was killed. And again, this is not Charlie Kirk anymore, right? This is not, I don't like his politics. He was a bad person. He said bad things, blah, 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 which I disagree with wholeheartedly. But this is just a woman that was attacked in a violent crime. Are we now going to demonize every last victim and treat every last person like they don't count? Why does the left feel they have, the monopoly on dehumanizing people? I'll tell you why. Because they have the monopoly on godlessness. The left is happy to be agnostic. The left is happy to be atheistic. The further they can get away from God, the happier they are. And that's just the truth. And you know what? There was a time in American history where that wasn't true, where you had plenty of Catholic Democrats. Today, a lot further and fewer than there were. So ultimately, when it comes down to, our republic isn't working the way it's supposed to. Well, Franklin warned it's a republic if we can keep it. Adams told us this Constitution, this republic, it's based on virtue. We need to be a virtuous people for this to bear the fruit that it's supposed to. If we can't be virtuous, we're lost. And I think we're lost, right? I think not that we're headed towards being lost. I think we've arrived at lost. And now we need to find our way before we lose ourselves completely. I don't think that we're totally foregone. I don't think that America is a thing of the past. I think there are still people that want to make this country what it once was, right? Make it great again, if you will. And I think some of those people are even illegal immigrants that come here with the American dream in mind. Legal immigrants that come here with the American dream in mind. Americans that grow up in a poorer neighborhood and say, I want to live in a more middle-class suburb, let's say, and give my kids a better life. There's nothing wrong with any of those things. But there is something wrong with lacking empathy. There is something wrong with treating people like they don't matter. And I realize, I beat up the Democrats. I beat up Jasmine Crockett. If somebody told me there was a violent crime that resulted in a murder in her family, I would clearly be a whole lot nicer to her, right? I would find a nicer way to disagree. I'm going to still disagree, but I don't want to, and I don't even have a nickname for her yet. We went through a whole day of calls on that, and there were some good ones, but I didn't write them down, so I forgot them. So maybe we should get those again. Funny names for Jasmine Crockett, so I can mock her. But, like I call AOC all out crazy. Those always help, right? But the reality is we have to get to a place where I think we're all on the same page, right? You can have your fringe membership, but the fringe membership seems to have taken over. And I put that on Democrats, a lack of leadership. Let's bring things back. That's all. Let's just bring things back. We don't need to be in this place anymore, where in one breath AOC says it's a tragedy that Charlie Kirk was killed, and in the next breath she's maligning him, saying that he was we've heard that civil rights cut. I haven't played this AOC cut for you because I want to get the Charlie Kirk cut, where he clearly outlines what he's talking about with the Civil Rights Act, and he says it got prostituted, and that it should be a one-page bill that only protects black people. He said, but what happened is that it doesn't only protect black people. Now it's been expanded, right? And we've talked about that in detail on this program. on how it was expanded to now protect gay, lesbian, trans, everything else, where you now have girls that are being affected by boys playing in girls' sports. And that, in the opinion of many people, I think many even people listening, that is not a civil right. That is very different than saying that just because you're black, we can't treat you different. Yeah, we should not treat you different. You're a human being. But to take the Civil Rights Act that was designed to basically say black people are human beings, and to use that to advance other political agendas with respect to LGBTQ and whatnot, it's a stretch, right? It's a bridge too far. And this is what Charlie Kirk was talking about. He wasn't talking about race. And to malign him that way and say, especially a guy who can't defend himself now. He's not here to defend himself. It is very disingenuous, in my opinion. Anyway, there's so much I want to talk about here, and I want to get to your calls. We have calls from a couple of places that I will get to right now. But just really, really an interesting time that we're going through. Anyway, your calls and more are coming up right now. 833-482-5337, 833-4-VALDEZ.
This is America at Night with Rich Valdes.
Thanks for what you do. You have so many people. You ask the questions that if the viewer had a microphone, they would ask that question, and you seem to always ask it right at the right time. So God bless you, my friend.
America at Night with Rich Valdes.
We should be clear about who Charlie Kirk was. A man who believed that the Civil Rights Act that granted Black Americans the right to vote was a mistake. Who, after the violent attack on Paul Pelosi, claimed that, quote, some amazing patriot, unquote, should bail out his brutal assailant, and accused Jews of controlling, quote, not just the colleges, it's the nonprofits, it's the movies, it's Hollywood, it's all of it, unquote. His rhetoric and beliefs were ignorant, uneducated, and sought to disenfranchise millions of Americans, far from the working tirelessly to promote unity, unquote, asserted by the majority in this resolution.
That's AOC, all out crazy, Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, and good old AOC, again, trashing Charlie Kirk, the dearly departed Charlie Kirk. And again, as is her right. I'm not angry that she's trashing him, although I think it's uncouth. I am upset with the idea that she's lying about a man who can't defend himself. She just said that Charlie Kirk called for the end of the civil right. He called it a mistake, and he did. Not a mistake because it liberated black people and because he's a racist, but because he felt it was taken too far in recent years when they started to use something intended to put blacks on a level playing field with whites when they did, the ending of Jim Crow, to using it to now add gay, lesbian, transgender, et cetera, et cetera. And I'm going to use the word, this is a prostitution of the intent of this bill. Not the right word, but it's the word I want to use. It's a mockery. It's the wrong thing to do. Listen to what Charlie Kirk really said.
Do you support the Civil Rights Act?
In spirit, but not how it's written.
Why?
It's too broad and paved its way for the persecution. For example, they're using the Civil Rights Act to put men in locker rooms like Riley was in.
How? Which article?
Article 4 or 5, I think. I actually don't know specifically, but the Civil Rights Act is being used for by the trans movement right now as because they say that they are women, therefore they demand an accommodation of women's rights. Riley can riff on this. They're using the Civil Rights Act literally to have access into men female locker rooms.
So what would you change about the Civil Rights Act?
I wouldn't make it as broad. I would make it much more crisp and concrete, and I wouldn't have it necessarily. I would also get rid of the disparate impact component of the Civil Rights Act. So the biggest problem with the Civil Rights Act, there's 4 components of the beast of anti-racism. There's affirmative action, DEI, disparate impact, and then, of course, there's a fourth that I'll remember in a second, which is basically disparate impact is that it must be racism if 2 different groups have different outcomes, which, of course, is outrageous. Disparate impact is the legal theory that undergirds most of the enforcement of the Civil Rights Act.
Charlie Kirk making it clear here. This is not about trying to belittle black people in any way. He wanted to simplify it so that it wouldn't, A, be used by the as a back door, if you will, by radicals on the left for the LGBTQ cause, and to simplify it so that nobody's using race for anything, which I think is the goal, right? At least the goal of Dr. Martin Luther King. We were told to judge people by the content of their character, not the color of their skin. But yet the media and AOC, they go in a different direction with this. So I want to talk about the media, and I figured who better to talk about the media with than somebody who is in the media. Of course, that would be our guest. Our guest is Krystina Alarcón Carroll. She's a writer and researcher, and she's the author of the book, Politically Media, Exposing Bias and Clickbait in the News. And I wanted to get into her book. I wanted to introduce you to her because ultimately it's we, right? We the people that lose out when we miss out on an accurate or an honest media. Krystina Carroll, welcome.
Hey, how are you? Good to hear you.
I'm doing great. Thanks for staying up late and keeping us company. And we're about to take a pause here, but I wanted to introduce you and I wanted you to kind of get a flavor for some of the conversation we were having because, you know, folks in our industry of the media aren't exempt from being biased. And they're also not exempt from doing things that are unscrupulous just to get eyeballs, whether it's through clickbait or something to get people to watch a video or, you know, what was once called yellow journalism.
100%. I mean, like, that's the opening line of my book is everyone is biased. And until people can accept that fact and find a way to move past it, you're not going to be able to progress as a society.
Yeah, I agree with that. Go ahead.
Yeah, so the book itself, I wrote it and released it just around last year's election. So a lot of it is breaking down and taking part of, hey, CNN said this, Fox News said this. They're both lying to you, but they're also not. They're telling you the truth and manipulating you instead. You know, CNN will be like, the economy is bad, and Fox News will be like, the economy is great. And I break down how they're not lying. They're just manipulating you. They want you to see something that's not really there. And I've worked on both sides of the media. So I've worked on the left, and a very extreme left, and I've worked on the right. Some people would consider it the extreme right. But regardless of where you fall politically, the left and the right are not having the same conversation. What Charlie Kirk was doing was great. He was making people have the same conversation, you know, whether you were the left or the right. So,
right. Well, let's pick up right there when we come back. Yeah. Krystina, just stand by for a second. I got to take a pause right here. Folks, we're coming back with Krystina Alarcón Carroll. She's the author of the book that we're discussing, and it's called Politically Media, Exposing Bias and Clickbait in the News. You can get it on Amazon, and we're coming right back with her. Don't go anywhere. I'm Rich Valdes.
Best head of hair in live late night radio 6 years in a row. It's Rich Valdes.
All right, amigos, welcome back. And I want to thank webroot.com. They sent me access to their digital products and really good stuff, our friends at Webroot. When it comes to this stuff we're looking at with data breaches all the time, you know, I, for one, I want to live a better digital life. And when you hear about all this news about major credit reporting agencies having this data breach that we just heard about, 4 million people affected as a result of the data breach, that's just one example of why it's so important to have a product like Webroot Total Protection. They've got the Total Protection Plan, which includes antivirus protection, also protection against emerging threats like malware, ransomware, phishing. You also have identity protection, right? Identity protection. Now, this is important because you get it for up to 10 identities. Plus, you get VPN, cloud backup, and more. Now, this plan also includes up to $1 million, $1 million in fraud expense reimbursement. And you can always call their 24/7 customer service based in the United States. Plus, they have a dedicated elder fraud hotline to give you support on that level. It also comes with monitoring for identity and dark web monitoring. So, I mean, I think this is, again, when they call it total protection, they're not kidding. WebRoot is the way to go. It's an all-in-one product to help you, your family, and an individual if you want, because, you know, you get up to 10. So it could be one, it could be up to 10. And if you want it, this is what you got to do. You got to go to the website. It's 50% off right now if you use the code I'm going to give you. 50% off the WebRoot Total Protection Plan or the WebRoot Essentials Plan. When you go to the website, here it is, webroot.com. That's webroot.com/rich, R-I-C-H. Webroot.com/rich. You're going to get 50% off the WebRoot Total Protection Plan or WebRoot Essentials when you go to webroot.com/rich. Now, moving on, I want to also kind of circle back to what we were talking about, like Jen Circle Back Psaki. Remember her? And we were talking about the media and clickbait and yellow journalism and how our guest has worked in newsrooms that are on the left and newsrooms that are right of center. And I find it interesting that, you know, as a young journalist making her way and writing this book, she had a lot of really interesting observations. And Sean Hannity played a really great montage on his television show on the Fox News channel. And I wanted to share just a little bit of it with you so that it can frame a little bit of our conversation here. Listen to this.
Now, the decision last night was made by ABC, the same ABC, remember, that fired the top-rated Roseanne Barr over a tweet, and popular top-rated radio host Bob Grant for a comment that he made on the air after the death of Ron Brown, former Commerce Secretary. But after spending years pushing cancel culture, the left's hypocrisy was on full display over Kimmel's suspension as they predictably and immediately went into full-blown meltdown mode. Take a look.
Congressman, I see you are wearing a hat. What does that hat say?
You're damn right I am, John. I was a guest on the Jimmy Kimmel Show. He, every night, has a right to come into any house that wants to watch and entertain Americans. It should shake every American that the President of the United States is out there firing comedians who make fun of him. That is not who we are, and every American should care and stand up to this.
It is outrageous. It's a page right out of Xi's playbook. This is just despicable, disgusting, and against democratic values.
I mean, understand, if we go down this road, and it seems like this is where we are destroying the freedom of expression in America.
I've also read a whole lot about authoritarian regimes. This is the playbook, folks. If you're not paying attention now and doing something about it, well, then you're going to have to sit down the rest of your life because democracy is being taken away.
All right, so you heard a little bit of what's going on with folks from the left side of the aisle, and this is all in response to the media, right? To Jimmy Kimmel, an entertainer that was removed by his network because of comments that he made. A guy who's been there for 10 years. He was there the first 4 years Trump was in office, and nobody took action against him. And he's been there the last 9 months, and nobody's taken any action because it wasn't Trump that fired him. He's not even fired. He's getting paid to just not be on the air as a result of what his company decided. But the criticism comes from the FCC commissioner making this comment. And again, the media gets kind of tricky there. But I want to, use that as sort of context and reference for our discussion, because our discussion is really about how things in the media get distorted on both sides of the aisle. And Krystina Alarcón Carroll is a writer and a researcher. She's the author of the book, her new book. It's called Politically Media, Exposing Bias and Clickbait in the News. And Krystina, let's pick up where you left off. You were telling us a little bit about your experience working in newsrooms across the political spectrum.
100%. And the first thing I want to point out is the clip that you had from Sean Hannity's show failed to include that Bill Maher was also canceled before cancel culture was a thing by ABC so many years ago. So there is like part of Hannity's bias. Failure to include that is not really being truthful to your listeners. And so that's one way that an example of how the right can kind of manipulate people sometimes, and even Ted Cruz is saying, hey, like the FCC went a step too far. Don't get involved, Look, 100% Jimmy Kimmel's remarks were completely uncalled for. They were wrong. And something should have happened to that guy. And the fact that he's off the air, I think is, I'm okay with it. But at the same time, he does have freedom of speech. So as an independent person, feel free to say that. But you do have to follow the rules that your station, makes. At the end of the day, it's the station making the rules. It's Fox News saying, hey, we're going to be right of center. It's ABC saying, hey, we're going to be left of center. So it's not out of the realm of shock that he gets let go because of this. I think Brendan Carr's comments probably it would have happened without Carr's comments. Let me put it that way.
Yeah, I agree, and I'm also going to agree with you and with Senator Cruz, not on the entirety of his comment. I think that in recent years, what we would have seen is a letter from the FCC chairman, a lot softer letter saying the same exact thing, that, by the way, if you keep doing this type of thing, be advised, be reminded that you're subject to an FCC license, et cetera, et cetera. And that's what people are used to. They perhaps are not used to hearing the FCC commissioner forcefully, confidently, authoritatively, and intelligently make the same comment he would have made in a letter on a podcast. And I think that has to do with the nature of how we communicate nowadays versus how we used to communicate in the past, and really just a matter of substance and style. But I agree with you. I think that action was going to be taken against Kimmel either way, because his commentary, I think, was just falling on the wrong ears at the wrong time, given the Kirk assassination.
100%. I mean, there again, totally like uncalled for. I don't know who has a brain in that region of the country, but they were not using it that day when they decided to put those remarks on air. There's just no one with a cognitive thinking ability would say, yeah, this is funny, this is great. It's just inappropriate you don't make fun of a dead guy. That's like basic journalism 101. But what do I know? Yeah.
Right. Yeah. It's only what you do.
Yeah. Just, I just write pretty words for a living.
Well, speaking of those pretty words, let's talk about this. What was the inspiration for you putting together this book, Politically Media, Exposing Bias and Clickbait in the News? What did you wake up one day and say, hey, you know what? I think I want to write a book about this stuff. And if so, why?
It actually came out of a lot of frustration and not anger, but almost anger. I try not to get angry. It's not healthy.
Yeah.
But,
ditto.
I've worked in newsrooms on the left and I've worked in newsrooms on the right. And aside from seeing that the left and the right aren't having the same conversation anymore, I was not just witnessing, but I was being given handwritten notes by CEOs of, you need to have this person on air. You need to get your anchor to say this. And there's just something really wrong with that. There's something, I can't do my job as a journalist, and I don't necessarily think I'd call myself that because I've worked in TV my whole career. It's, you can't be a journalist if you're being told what to say or how to say it or what angle to go with. There is no angle. Your angle is facts and news. And so just living in that world and being frustrated, I decided to write this a lot for the younger generation because they don't know a world like you and I do of this is what news used to be. It used to be straight down the line, and we didn't have this partisan issue. People were more geared towards center, and you didn't have these extremists on the left or the right making so much noise. Social media has definitely amplified that. It's given a box in the middle of Times Square for people to scream upon, and just say, you're wrong, and I don't have to listen to you.
So let me ask
giving
you
you
this.
these echo chambers as well.
Is this box in the middle of Times Square for the general public a good thing that the people have more free speech, or is it a bad thing that more Americans have access to free speech through social media or this digital box?
So free speech is always a good thing. However, if you are living within an echo chamber, it's not. At that point, it's not healthy. If you are on the right and you're like, everything that Donald Trump does is great, I'm gonna freeze you. I'm gonna say nope, not cool, because you've been in relationships, I've been in relationships. You're not gonna agree with everyone you're in a relationship with,
right.
And that's okay. That's
you're
part
saying
of
there's
being
no
a
objectivity.
relationship, right? You can't. If you think the left or the right is doing everything perfectly, there's something not right with you, and you need to fix that before you can move forward in life. Because you shouldn't agree with everyone on every topic, every single day.
I agree with you, and I think what you brought up a moment ago is really a good example of that. Right? We had I have not seen, at least lately, I have not seen Jasmine Crockett battling against AOC. I've not seen Ilhan Omar versus AOC. I've not seen Eric Swalwell versus Jasmine Crockett. I don't see a whole lot of disagreement amongst Democrats. But I did see today Ted Cruz arguing with President Trump, and President Trump saying, I disagree with Ted Cruz. And on the topic that you brought up, the Brendan Carr issue. So I think it is good to have disagreement and debate and discussion, and we don't always have to agree, right? To me, it's a sign of being healthy and being objective when you say, you know what, I don't agree. For example, I'm supporting Curtis Sliwa for mayor of the city of New York. It's my opinion that Curtis has an incredible shot at winning, and he's the only Republican in the race. But there are Republicans at the national level that are saying, well, maybe we should go with a Democrat that's a little less dangerous because Curtis doesn't have a shot, right? I think that's their opinion. I'm not going to demonize them. We just don't agree on this. So I think you're right that you need to have a little bit of back and forth to land somewhere.
100%. If without back and forth, that's what our founding fathers did. Look at how long it took them to create the Declaration of Independence, to create, the Bill of Rights. All these things that they created, there was hours, hundreds of hours of back and forth. And what about this? What about that? So without a healthy amount of back and forth, and you don't see that on the left at all. We definitely see it on the right, and I'm happy to see it on the right because it allows people to be free. That's what freedom of speech is. If you're just agreeing with people and you're like, yep, 100% all the way, full stop. You need to check yourself before you wreck yourself or the rest of the country.
Yeah, a good point, Krystina. I'm going to pause you right there. I just got to take a quick pause right here. Folks, we're on with Krystina Alarcón Carroll. She is a writer, researcher, and author. She's the author of the book, Politically Media, Exposing Bias and Clickbait in the News. And as you can tell, she's down the middle, and she's not afraid to say it, truly independent. You can get the book on Amazon, Amazon.com. Again, the book, Politically Media, Exposing Bias and Clickbait in the News. We're coming right back to wrap up. Don't go anywhere.
This is America at Night with Rich Valdes. Call now, 833-4-VALDES. That's 833-482-5337. 833-4-VALDES. That's Valdes with an S. America at Night with Rich Valdes.
All right, amigos, welcome back. We wrap up with Krystina Alarcón Carroll. That's Krystina with a Y, a K and a Y. Krystina, Alarcón, Alarcon, Carol with 2 R's and 2 L's. And Krystina, let everybody know how they can reach you and how they get a copy of the book.
Yeah. So my book is available exclusively on Amazon. Paperback, hardcover, ebooks, whatever you like, it's there. And I can be found at Krystina, Krystina, Alarcón, Alacarr, and that's on Twitter, on Instagram. On Instagram, it's more like baking because that's been a good therapy over trying to figure out what's happening in the media life.
Right.
And it's healthy for you. So.
And again, I just want to give the website again, just so people don't miss it. It's Krystina, KrystinaAlarcon.com, or that same thing, same spelling, on Instagram and X.
Instagram, Twitter. That's usually where I hang out.
Outstanding. Well, I want to thank you for hanging out with us tonight. Everybody, Krystina Alarcón, Carol, Godspeed to you. Keep up the great work. Good luck with the book.
Thank you. Thank you so much for having me. It's good to hear you.
My pleasure. We'll do it again soon. And amigos, we go straight to your calls. Open phones across America very quickly here. Pat, Sedona, Arizona. Go right ahead, sir.
Hey, Rich. How you doing? Great talk about the that weight control thing. And one thing I wanted to tell you, because I'm 5'8", and I was 203 pounds when I finished playing college football, and I was big and bulky, and I was really unhappy. And I'll tell you one thing, my trainer told me, if you want to start losing weight, because you don't need to carry around this bulk, don't start running and walking too much. Get on a stationary bike. Save your knees. Save your knees. It didn't work.
You're right. Save your knees is right. You know, it's funny. I haven't tried the bike. I find the bike harder than jogging on a treadmill, but I'll give it a shot. Pat in Sedona, Arizona. Thanks, brother. Godspeed to you. Amigos, we're coming right back. Your calls and more. Don't go anywhere.
This is America at Night with Rich Valdes.
All right, to the phones we go. Chris, Gainesville, Virginia, WMAL. Go right ahead, sir.
Yes, I'm bemoaning the point that the fact that the Disney brand has been damaged by this whole thing. Walt Disney was a Goldwater Republican, and he wore a Goldwater button on his lapel to a media event at Lyndon Johnson's White House, and there's a picture of him in the autobiography or the biography of him shaking hands with Lyndon Johnson and having a laugh. But he was a Goldwater Republican, and he would just be, yes, he was, and he would be spinning in his grave to see what Michael Eisner did to his precious brand. He was a G-rated movie guy. He didn't believe in having mirror
It's funny you say that, Chris. That Disney had, for many years, was synonymous with like rated G. You know, at least in New York, we used to say, when they took out the hookers from 42nd Street and they put the big Disney store there, people always used to say, no, they made it Disney, which meant they cleaned it up. It's little kids. It's, family friendly. And you're right. It's interesting how it's changed, the way it's become so warped in many ways. Chris in Gainesville, Virginia, thanks for the call. Shout out to Tony, Michael, David, and everybody else that's on hold. I appreciate you. Hasta la próxima. Take care. Good night. God bless you, America. I'm Rich Valdes.